Hi guys, I am heading out to the high tunnel to get some seed starting supplies. I have got to start today. I'm so behind. I know that quite a few people from our classes have gotten in touch with me about the same thing, saying, I haven't even started yet. Is it too late? No, it's not too late. You can still start seeds and be plenty successful this garden season. And I am right there with you. I'm super behind. So it is March 10th or 11th. And I'm finally just starting onions and peppers today. I've been trying to get to them for weeks and it has not been happening. So I'm starting them today. Hopefully this video will be posted within a day or two, and so it'll be kind of happening in real time. I'm going to show you a few seed starting tricks that I use today. But the biggest thing that we do for seed starting success is we make our own homemade germination mix, and it has been the absolute biggest game changer of all. So if you could do one thing, I would do this. I'm going to share all the ingredients, how we make it. It's super, super simple, easy to source everything, and it is a game changer. We went from having so many pests and issues in our grow room to zero pests and just a way better start to life, and it'll all make sense when you see what goes into the germination mix. So I am looking for the big 50-gallon container that I normally mix this germination mix in, and I just realized Jake confiscated it for his high tunnel vermicomposting experiment. Never mind. I'm gonna have to find something else to make my germination mix in. So I'm gonna close the high tunnel back up. We're gonna head inside, improvise with some kind of smaller container, and this thing never wants to shut. Okay, as I was saying, I am going to get everything started today. So I'm going to take you along with me. We're going to go back to the shop and mix up this germination mix, and then we're going to start seeds. And if you haven't started yet and you can't get to it till next week or the week after, there's still plenty of time. You can start seeds and you will get so much better of a jump start on your season and have just a better gardening year overall if you start your own seeds versus using store-bought starts, because store-bought starts have pesticides in their germination mix, and it kills the microbiology in the soil. And so when you go to transplant those starts out into your garden, those pesticides are still there at the roots of your plants, and they're killing anything that tries to come near, which the microbial life is what delivers the nutrients to your plants. So they're super essential for you to be successful in gardening. And that's why so many people have issues where when they go to transplant their plants, they say, I transplanted and it's been weeks and my tomatoes aren't growing, my peppers haven't grown at all, what's going on? It's that. There's a whole bunch of issues with store-bought transplants. So again, I'm going to show you how to quickly get up and going with seed starting so that you can grow your own seed starts and have a much better jump start to your gardening year. All right, so I am sitting in our shop kitchen because this is just where I have like a good amount of floor space right now to put this together. So I have a big old bin here, and I usually just make a big batch of germination mix, and then I just keep it moist and I use it until it's gone, and then I make another batch. So if you're not going to be doing that many seed starts, you can make this recipe. It's in parts, so you can make a very small amount of it or you can make a huge amount of it, whatever you need. You can absolutely hold it over for a few months as you're going through the entire season. So if you make it now, you can still use this in 2 or 3 months from now, as long as it doesn't dry out. As soon as it dries out, it kills the microbiology in your soil, and so you need to add fresh compost so that you have that microbiology that's alive and well, because the microbiology is what feeds your plants the nutrients. So without any life, you have dirt, and you can't grow in dirt. So you can absolutely hold this over like I was saying, but at the end of the season, when you're done seed starting, you should just put whatever you have left over into your garden, because the likelihood of you keeping it alive all the way until next year is pretty slim. So it's better to just use it in the garden and then start fresh next year. Everything besides compost in this mix can be held over for years to come. So it's all ingredients like cocoa coir that are sterile and as long as they stay dry, they'll stay good. And so you can buy extra of them and then you can just use them year after year. But once you mix it all together and add the compost that has the live microbiology, that's when it now has an expiration date on it, so to speak. All right, so let's get started. The first ingredient in this mix is coco coir. You get it in a block and it is like a brick. Even with a hammer, I don't think you could pull that thing apart. So the way that you get it to where it's usable is to put it in a tote like this. Just put the brick in the bottom of the tote and add a 5-gallon bucket of water. That brick will slowly wick up the water and crumble and fall apart, and then you can easily use it. So for this recipe, just for the simplicity of showing you, typically when I do a part, I do like a 5-gallon bucket, but Jake stole my 50-gallon tote that I normally make this in. So I have a smaller bin to work with, and I do have some germination mix in here. So I'm just gonna make a small batch of it for the sake of demonstration. So today my part is gonna be this pitcher. Typically my part would be like a 3-gallon bucket or a 5-gallon bucket. Anyway, hopefully that's clear. So for the first ingredient is coco coir. Like I said, coco coir is from coconut husk, and when they process it for this purpose, they shred it up and they rinse it in water, they let it soak, and then they dry it out for like a year and compress it into a brick. And by the time it gets to you, there's no chance that there is any living thing whatsoever in that coconut coir. So it is a very safe, pest-free product to use. You do not need to buy organic. It's not something that needs to be organic. So you're just getting this, this nice medium that is pest-free. It really has no nutrient value. So you might be wondering, why use it? The great thing about coco coir is that it both drains and retains water depending on the situation. We need both of those traits in our germination mix because we want to make sure that our mix is holding water enough that it is delivering water to our seed so it can break down our seed coat, and then that cotyledon can emerge and the seed start can grow. But we don't want so much water retention that those roots are just sitting in water and having chance to rot or get disease or anything like that. So we want both water retention and good water drainage. Coco coir provides that, and it is a safe, pest-free product. So the first ingredient is 2 parts coco coir. Now you can do up to 4 parts coco coir. So if you want to, you can also mix in peat moss. Instead, you could do 2 parts coco coir or 2 parts coco coir and 2 parts peat moss, or you could do 4 parts coco coir. You cannot do 4 parts peat moss because peat moss has some acidity to it. And so if you did all parts peat moss, you would have too much acidity to your mix, and you're gonna possibly be in trouble with having problems with your seed starts. So a lot of people don't like to use peat moss because the peat bogs are being over harvested, and it's kind of a sustainability issue. So if you're gonna go with one or the other, honestly, just buy coco coir. You don't need to have peat moss in this mix. All right, so that's 4 parts coco coir. The next ingredient, if you're skipping peat moss like I am today, the next ingredient is vermiculite. Vermiculite, I have a huge bag of it right here behind me. It's mined. It's Latin for rock worm, and it's because when it's heated up, when the vermiculite is heated up, it kind of explodes like one of those firecracker firework worms that you light it on fire and it just kind of grows. That's kind of what vermiculite does, and then it's broken up, and you can either get it really, really finely ground like a powder, you can get it really coarse, or you can get it in a medium coarseness, which is what you want for gardening. So I get this bag off of Amazon. You can get it at Home Depot. You can get it through like local feed stores. Sometimes it's hard to find this time of year when everybody's seed starting because this is really popular with big growers. I'll show you why in a second because there's a really great trick you can do with vermiculite. But if you can't get your hands on vermiculite, you can use perlite. Vermiculite, of the two of them, vermiculite is better. Vermiculite can retain some things like magnesium and slowly release them over time. So it has some benefits to your starts. The other thing that's great about vermiculite is that It retains up to 4 to 6 times its weight in water. So it has really good water retention, and it loosens the soil. It acts kind of like perlite also, where it keeps the soil nice and loose, which you want for your seed starts so that they don't have difficulty in spreading their roots out and growing. So that's why I like to use vermiculite. I also use it once I'm seed starting. I use it on top of my trays, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And you can't do the same things with perlite as you can do with vermiculite. So of the two, vermiculite is better. Sometimes, like I said, you can't get vermiculite during the season. So if perlite is your only option, you can replace the vermiculite with perlite in this recipe, but ideally you would get vermiculite. And like I said, this holds over year after year. It doesn't go bad as long as it stays dry. So you can get a big bag of it and you can just use it for years to come until it's gone and then buy more, which is what I do. Okay, so the next ingredient is vermiculite. It's 2 parts vermiculite. So we have 4 parts cocoa coir and then 2 parts vermiculite. And then the last ingredient is the worm casings or compost. If you don't have worm casings, you can absolutely use compost. The better quality you can source, the better it's going to be. So here in Spokane, there's a place called Marley's Worm Farm that has really great compost with worm casings mixed into it that you could go buy, and you really don't need all that much for a germination mix. So it's worth investing in a good quality compost to make this mix if you can. Or you can make your own worm casings, and that's even better. So there's the leeway here. I typically do half a part in my mix, so it really doesn't need that much. You can always do more if you want to. It's just that it's not necessary because the seed starts don't need that much nutrients and microbial life while they're like in their trays growing. They have a lot of what they need in their seed coat, and they really don't draw that much from the soil. So half a part is plenty if you're paying for an expensive compost. If you have plenty to spare and you want to put more in, go for it. It's not going to hurt anything. So these are our worm casings. They have about 20% biochar inoculated in them. So this is really great because it's just absolutely loaded with microbial life and nutrients. And with using this in the germination mix, we're just giving our seed starts the best possible start to life. But the other great thing is that because we mix the biochar in here, we are evenly dispersing the biochar out in our garden because every time we go transplant a plant, the biochar, is transplanted with it. And then each year we're doing this, so we're just gradually getting more and more biochar into our garden. And you can go spread inoculated biochar in your garden also, but this is just a great way to do it if you are limited, because it's hard to make a lot of biochar. So if you're trying to make it and get it into your garden, this is a great way to do it. So if you don't know about biochar, it's amazing. You should look up the Terra Preta. It's absolutely phenomenal what has been discovered about it. It was used in the Amazon in a place where they thought that you couldn't farm, that there couldn't have possibly been a civilization because the dirt is so bad in the Amazon. And then they discovered the Terra Preta, and basically that one of the world's largest civilizations in history lived in the Amazon, all because of basically biochar in the soil that was able to sustain a massive population. And for centuries, we've believed that it was a myth, that there was no population there because of how bad the Amazon soil was, until finally, very recently, the Terra Preta was discovered. And as they began getting planes and helicopters and drones over the area, they realized that the Terra Preta was actually a massive part of South America, and the civilization there was so big that they had roads that could support 6 chariots side by side, which just is massive for that time period. So it's really, really cool that there was in the Amazon, they were able to have this like major, large scale growing operation with the Terra Preta. And I think now with how our agriculture is, one of the big arguments is that just we have too many people to support, and that it's not possible to grow in healthy soil and to really take care of your soil and grow a massive amount of food without pesticides and fertilizers and all of those things. And with this discovery of the Terra Preta, that really debunks that. So we have a civilization that didn't have tractors or equipment or anything. They had far less as far as agriculture goes. They were working with a whole lot less, and they were able to do a lot more. And that's really, really exciting. It's a huge discovery. So I'd encourage you to look into it if you don't know anything about it. In our gardening course, we teach how to make your own biochar retort, how to make biochar, how to use biochar, and all of those things. And one of our favorite ways to use it is in worm casings, because like I said, it gets it out into the whole garden. All right, so I actually have more than a part here, so I'm gonna pour out these worm casings. I'm gonna do 3/4 of a part today because I'm feeling generous. We actually have a lot of worm casings to spare this year, so I'm upping my amount I'm putting in just a little bit. And now all that's left is adding some water and mixing this up, and then we get to start planting. So let me grab some water. Okay, so here's the rule with water. You want your soil to be moist enough that you can make a snowball, and when you squeeze, a little bit of water comes out. You don't want it to be so moist that a ton of water comes out, and you also don't want it to be so dry that no water comes out. So there's kind of a happy medium you have to find there. This is too dry right now. It will hold its shape, but there's no water coming out. So it needs more water. You can always add more water, but it's very difficult to take water out, right? Impossible. You actually have to add in coco coir or other things in order to get the germination mix to be less soggy, and it's really difficult to work with a sopping wet germination mix. So my point is just add a little bit at a time so that you don't get too much in there. All right, so I am gonna mix this. I don't have very much in there today, so it's not gonna be quite the arm workout that it normally is. I normally do a 50-gallon tote, like I said, and I do my recipe, and my part is 5-gallon buckets. So it's just like a ton of work to mix it up. Which is nice in the end because then I have a whole bunch and I don't have to make it again for a while, but in the moment it takes me a good 10 to 15 minutes to mix it, and it is a killer arm workout. All right, so the thing is you want to make sure you get it really, really, really mixed up well. Like, you don't want to have any big chunks of anything. You want to make sure that every pot that gets potted has all of the different components of the mix in it. So it's important to take a little bit of extra time, get every nook and cranny and corner, and really mix it all the way. All right, so now we have snowball. When I squeeze, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of water coming out. So this is the perfect consistency, and we are ready to get planting. So the first thing I'm gonna do is start with my peppers. Now, one of the things I see people do with seed starting is they fill up their pots or their trays and they push them down and pack them and then continue filling them up. You never, ever, ever want to compress your soil or pack it, because that's going to make it harder for your seeds to grow. So whenever you do a tray, I always scoop the soil into the tray or the pot or whatever I'm doing, and then you hit the bottom on a surface and pack it down. This will cause your soil to settle down in there without having any kind of compaction. The other thing is that it is very important to tap everything that you plant into, because you'll have air pockets if you don't. And as soon as your plant roots hit those air pockets, the roots cannot grow in air. So they'll stop and it will mess up your growth. So you want to make sure that whenever you plant, you always do a gentle tapping so that you can settle that soil and make sure that you don't have any air pockets. So I am going to get going on this, and then I'll show you how I do onions next. Okay, so now I'm moving on to onions here, and this is so easy. When I first started planting onions, I started with those sets that look like little mini onion bulbs, and they didn't really grow. It took them forever to start growing, and so by the time they really started, it was too late in the season. They didn't get nearly big enough, and it was really disappointing. So the next year I heard that seed starting is way better, so I got one of those 288 cell trays that has 1 million tiny, tiny squares, and I planted each one. It was absolute hell. It took forever, and then they quickly outgrew it, and I was trying to pot it up, and it was just an absolute nightmare. So the following season I had absolutely had it, and I just kind of went rogue and decided to just sprinkle them into an open tray and hope for the best. and I had the best year of onions ever. It turns out that they grow really, really great that way. They do not need to be planted into cells. They're really easy to pull apart when you're transplanting. So it's no problem at all to do it this way is what I'm telling you. It's the best solution, and it takes literally a minute or two to plant onions. It's so easy. So first thing, oh, I forgot to show you. You need a 10-20 tray or some kind of tray. It doesn't even have to be a professional growing tray, just some kind of container with holes in the bottom so that you can both have the soil wick up water and drain water. You never want to plant into something without holes. So we got our tray with holes. On the bottom of that, I have a 10-20 shallow germination tray. I really like to use these as the bottom tray rather than like a deeper 10-20 tray. This is what a lot of people will use, and they nest like this, and then they're very difficult to water because you have to pull this tray all the way up to get your pitcher in there to water. So I find that it's just a lot easier to use the shallow germination tray. I got all of this off of Greenhouse Megastore, but like I said, I mean, if you just had some kind of plastic container, like something that you, like a lunch meat plastic container, poke holes in the bottom of it and set it on a plate, that would work to plant onions, and you do not need some kind of professional setup. So then I take the soil, this isn't quite enough, and you need your tray to be filled up like maybe a little over an inch of soil. You don't need a ton. The roots don't get super deep with onions. So spread it out. Again, I'm not compressing the soil at any point. I'm just spreading it out. I'm going to shake you here for a second, but the way that you make sure everything settles is to drop your tray. So I have the camera sitting on the table that I'm working on, so I'm sure I'm shaking you just a little bit. I'm sorry. All right, so now that I have that done, make sure you have your tag labeled. I always put the name of what I'm planting, but I also put the date that I'm starting, and I put, if it's in an open flat and I'm just shaking things into an open flat, I put the number of seeds that it says on the seed packet so that I know roughly how much they're supposed to be. Some onion packets have like 75 seeds, some have as much as 500. You can plant any amount into a tray, so I'd recommend separating by variety. Don't plant multiple varieties together. It really doesn't matter. It's just that it's nice when you get out in the garden to have it all sorted and organized. If you don't care, if you're not ADD or OCD that way, then you could just plant everything you wanted to into an open flat. It wouldn't matter. But I like to keep it all separated by variety. I will plant up to about 500 seeds in one 10-20 flat for reference. So I have my packet of seeds. There's 300 in this one. This is the white sweet Spanish onion from M.I. Gardener. So then you're not gonna be able to see this. They're black, but I just sprinkle it over my tray and I evenly disperse it, and that's it. So then I like to take my vermiculite. This is where this comes in handy. Remember, we mix this into the germination mix. The great quality about vermiculite is that it's very, very, very light, like packing foam almost. And so it lets light through. Onion is one of those seeds that likes to be surface sown and needs light for germination. So the vermiculite is light enough that it allows light through for germination. But remember, it has that quality where it retains 4 to 6 times its water weight. And so when you sprinkle it on top of the tray like this, on top of that seed, what it does, we're going to spray it down with water next, and it's going to absorb some of that water that's sprayed, and it's going to then hold that water right next to that seed that we just planted, that I just planted, and it's going to keep it nice and moist. And remember, with a seed, the kind of the things that it needs to germinate is basically moisture and either light or darkness, depending on what the seed prefers, and then a certain temperature. So we have the warm temperature in this shop that the onion is going to like, and we have the light. But if you were to just leave onion seed on a tray under grow lights, it's warm enough and it's got the light, is it going to sprout? No, it needs the water. And a lot of times people, when they're doing their own seed starts, one of the big problems they run into is they don't water correctly, and so that top layer of soil gets really dried out, and it gets cakey, and then the seed is sitting in that, and it's essentially like it's sitting on a plate. It's not going to be able to germinate. So it needs to be consistently and evenly moist over a period of a few days at least for that seed to be able to break down the seed coat enough for the cotyledon to pop out and for the seed start to begin growing. So vermiculite is great because it retains that water. What it does is it holds water on the surface of the soil, so it prevents the soil from drying out on top, and it keeps that seed coat nice and moist so that it has an easier time germinating. All right, so then once you have the vermiculite down, you want to spray it down with water. I don't do that much, I just do some spritzes on top because the germination mix is fairly moist at this point, so the vermiculite will soak up some of that. All right, so then once I get it sprayed down, the last component of helping your seeds germinate is a dome. These are really, really important for germination. What they do is they trap in the heat and the humidity, and they create kind of a greenhouse effect, which is super ideal for seed germination. So you will really increase your germination success by using these. You only want to use a dome for about a week. So I wait 7 days or until about 75% of the seeds are germinated, whichever comes first. Because with these domes, what you're doing is creating an anaerobic environment. So aerobic is like exercise, you have lots of oxygen. Anaerobic is against oxygen, you do not have oxygen moving through. So if you have anaerobic compost, it's compost that stinks and it's gone bad. Same thing with this environment, we're not allowing airflow, so we're creating an anaerobic environment. That is where things like mold thrive. So think of under your sink where you don't get a lot of oxygen and you have more moisture, that's where you're gonna tend to get mold. Same thing with this. You do not want mold, it is going to affect your seed starts in a negative way. So we're just using the dome just enough to create the perfect environment for the seed coat to break down and for the seed to germinate. But not so long that we give opportunity for mold and bad bacteria to begin growing and thriving. All right, so now that I have this planted and ready to go, I'm going to bring you with me to my grow room and show you what it looks like to get these under lights. All right, welcome to the grow room here in the shop. It's so nice to have this. Before I had this room, I had all of my seed starts in the spare room of our basement, and it was getting really moldy in our basement and causing problems in our house. So it's really nice to have a place to put the seed starts. And we have a fan in here that runs so that we don't get too much humidity. And then also behind you, I have a faucet that I can fill up 5-gallon buckets. So it makes watering really easy. And then I have a drain in the floor so that anything that spills, we just have a concrete floor and a drain. And so this has been just like a phenomenal setup compared to what we have. I'm very, very thankful for it. All right, so as far as grow shelves go, it's really simple. I get these shelves from Costco. You can get them on Amazon and Home Depot and Lowe's, but they're always cheapest at Costco. So what I like to do is I have the top shelves close together, and then those shelves get progressively further apart so that as the seeds grow, you always want them about 1 inch to 2 inches from the light. So as they start to grow up, I can just keep moving them down and I don't have to mess with everything and make new shelves or anything like that. So it's a pretty good system. Up here, I have them all, like I said, close together. So you can see I've got all the onions going right now, and I'm about to bring peppers in. We have tons and tons of shelves because we have sold seed starts in the past. We're not selling them this year, but we still have all the shelves in here. So I actually won't need this many shelves for what we're doing this year. I'll probably need about 2 to 3 shelves. I am gonna do some flowers because I have to have flowers for the courses that we do. We do some flower arranging and dried flower arranging. So I'm gonna have to grow some flowers, and flowers are really what take up the most room because pretty much every flower has to be seed started. So usually the majority of the like space that is needed in our grow room is for flowers. The other thing is lights. That you do not ever need to get a grow light that's labeled as a grow light. That's for growing pot or for fruiting flowers. If you just want to do seed starting, you just need shop lights. So get something in the range of 5,000 to 6,500 Kelvin. Kelvin refers to the color of the light. So like a warm light is going to be down in the like 1 to 3,000 range where it's more yellow. A bright white, which is what you're going to see in a warehouse like Costco or Sam's Club or one of those, you know, any kind of those warehouse stores. Those are going to be your really bright shop lights because they have such tall ceilings. The light needs to be much brighter white, and that is the color range that you need for your seed starts. So that's why shop lights are going to always work for seed starting. So I like to buy a big 12-pack or 24-pack off of Amazon or Home Depot or Walmart. wherever I can find them. I kind of hate the LED lights that are the strip lights like back here. They tend to pulse and flash and flicker, and it really drives me nuts. I really like the old-fashioned lights, but these are harder and harder to find. So whatever you can get your hands on will work. Like I said, 5,000 to 65,000 Kelvin. Lumens refers to the brightness of it, so it's not as important. Kelvin is really what matters. And then that's it. Really, you just gotta water. I water every other day. I don't even water every day. So I bottom water. I put about a half a pitcher per tray. Then I watch and make sure that the tray is using up all that water by the time I go to water again. So you want to find that perfect balance where you're giving it enough water that it's still moist by the time you water it again, not so much that it's sitting in water and when you go to water again there's still water in there, and you want to make sure that it's enough that it's not drying out and getting like that deserty, cakey type top to it because you're not giving it enough water. So you want to try and find that balance where you're watering it consistently and the right amount, and you will find it very quickly. That's it. From here, I'm just going to be filling up the grow room and watering it every other day and preparing for spring. Hopefully all this is helpful to you. If you have questions, please drop them in the comments. We're always happy to answer questions in the next videos or show more if there's things that you want to see or us to demonstrate. You can always tell us in the comments, and we're happy to answer those in videos. So hopefully you guys are getting started seed starting like me and having a good start to your spring. I will see you next week. Thanks, guys.